So, welcome to a new video. Seems like all of them are tutorial explanations, but that's because I like recording them. But this is maybe my best door this year. 950 block observerless 6x6. Also one of the few doors which I've made that has entities. Anyway, what it says on the tin, it's for what it is. It's like average speed, I think. I don't really know many 950 of the 6x6s because there aren't that many. But what I do know is that the retraction of the quad is quite fast, but this tape is horribly slow. Even though it's not that slow, but whatever. It's also surprisingly not very dense at the bottom. Well, I guess it is quite dense. So yeah, should give credit to Atta, who I took the bottom inputs from and the tape, but they said they took the tape from an armor door and the bottom inputs are kind of standard. So yeah, and thanks to Doormaker for teaching me how to do this clip. So yeah. So you will need stack and 17 sticky pistons, 11 pistons, 11 blocks of redstone, a stack and 26 of redstone dust, a stack and 7 repeaters, 12 torches, 9 droppers, 19 hoppers, 7 comparators. It's quite an expensive door. 2.5 stacks of building blocks and a bit. 30 transparent blocks, but none of them have to be transparent. It's just what I have in the hallway, so you can see what's happening. 22 transparent blocks, these have to be transparent. 52 solid door blocks, which you need. So yeah, need this one for a monostable, these for the tape. That has to be solid, and the rest I think will just door blocks. 2 redirectors, which can be, you need one here and one there. That can be replaced with a trap chest if you want, or a rail on top of the piston. That I think is tripwire is just good for that one. Not like you're going to be building this because it's a bad door to build. 2 furnaces, one there, and I don't know where the other one is. And we also need this. I ignored. Cool. So you need sand or a gravity solid block for this. 2 minecarts. One, the top minecart, which is a clip, needs a minecart to place it easily. So you have to do that before doing the other minecart if you only want to use 2. You need a rail, 2 rails for that. 6 items for the containers, and I think that's it. So yeah, lots of redstone blocks, which is a bit mad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's another one somewhere. Right, so 5 deep, 10 long, and however high. And this is where the door is. So it's 2 on one side, 2 on the other side, and the piston stack in the middle. Then you got singles side of the door, single side of the door, and then where the singles placed. So then you need quads here in the middle. 1 block off the ground because doing a 900 block observer 6x6, ridiculously hard, and I don't want to do that. So this is the bottom layout. And then you've got singles. And the exact same up here. Storage. Never done this, but I could explain the layout. But basically, this is the exact sequence. So that's the close, and then it does a quad. Tracks that into storage. This does that. Another quad into storage. Tape. Like that. And then you retract it like that. If you wanted to know. Inputs are next. I'm going to use barrier blocks like here so I can see what's happening. So you need a slab here and the updater is like that. We need it to be a slab because we're going to do this, and this dust will power stuff, which we don't want it to power from here. We also have a dust slab here for the same reason. And then that like that. And then over here we bud this top storage with this and an updater. Also, and then we need this hopper loop. Due to dust powering droppers, this door is locational, but it's very, very rare for it to break, because you need to have it so when this dust line powers, the item jumps from here all the way into this hopper, which I did. I tested about 150 places and it never happened, so I'm hoping it's rare enough not to matter. And then we've got hopper there, which has dust, also no color coding for some reason, and that does that. And then we need, and then we've got that to do the updating. And the way we don't power these when retracting the pistons, because we don't want that, is we zero tick this line. So none of these will update, which is really easy because you just use that, which is directional if it's powering pistons, but it's not meant to power pistons, so it's fine. Talking about directionality, this is directional, I think, and can sometimes power that. I don't know. I tested a few directions and it never happened. But if this dust does power these, then you can just remove that dust. It's fine. So yeah, those are the top inputs. The bottom inputs are a bit harder. Gonna do this as well. Slab there because there'll be a piston here. These have to be 3-tick repeaters because we link these two inputs up. So yeah, And the way we like it's hard to do, but we use this input link to do this pulse as well. We just power this at the right time, so these don't power. So those are those, and then the storage, which is really weird because we've got no space, and I have to look over there a bit because I don't know it very well. But we have this dust powers this repeater powers this goes over and powers this, but gets blocked due to that. Then we got another repeater, and then we've got this exciting mess which powers these two. So yeah, you get those, and they can all be spat out and whatnot. And then the way we do the bottom pistons is how do we do that? This is a repeater, sorry. We have this dust powers that one. This block powers that one. This comes down here. This block powers that one. I'm pretty sure that has to be a slab. Yeah. Why does this have to be a slab? I don't know. I'll make it a slab anyway, because why not? And then we've got this. So this block powers that, and so on. So if we stop, they will extend in a wave pattern, which is kind of cool. But you'll realise this block power the piston stack. So we need to time this perfectly with this. So these are doing stuff when these blocks get powered. But that's not too bad. Then we have this input joint. So all slabs, okay. Just like that. So whenever we power storage, this powers like that, which is very, very useful. And that's the inputs done. And I'll make a start, I guess. I'll fill these in because that's always useful. Actually, I should make the tape first because tapes are annoying. Tape means we need all these to be solid, and the redstone block goes there, and this goes like that, so that's how it works. Yeah, that's the tape layout. And now we go on to the top, which I made ages ago, so I forgot what it looks like. But this comparator, oh, this dropper circuit is where all the large amounts of hoppers comes from, and it's the refire because it needs to be ridiculously slow because the tape is slow. But I'll get to that. So we move those like that, and then block there, and this gets powered, so it's a monostable, which goes and powers this line. This is the refire and part of closed circuit tree. So that gets powered from there. Bish bash bosh. First thing that happens on the refire. But yeah, I'm trying to think what order we should make the top in. I guess I should go for the close first. So the close, what the close does is, it's quite smart. Input there, and that's a slab, but it doesn't need to be a slab. Needed to be a slab in an older version. Anyway, so we one tick this, which goes straight to the first storage, but also retracts this, which does this one tick here, and this repeater line powers this, which gets up, and the top storage powers updated by this, and the piston stack gets powered, but because of this one game tick pulse, it can't push down, and yeah, and we also squeeze in here, stick a repeater there, which does part of the refire, and also on the close, after this has been one ticked, this retracts, doing the monostable, but it goes back into the storage, which does the second storage, goes all the way around here, powers the piston stack because there's nothing blocking it, and then all we have to do is power this line after a while. So that's the monostable doing its thing, then that doing its thing, same time those are powered, then that repeater there does the storage again, and we eventually get that pushed down, and then all we have to do is extend that, and the close is done. Which ain't too bad. Quite smart. I should just say I probably took a bit of inspiration from Atter's 950, which uses a similar thing, but I tried to change it to be more original. So that's the close, and also the refire. So you'll notice we've got one repeater here, one repeater here, which means when this one game ticks, blocks get retracted into storage and push this down from here, which is very useful. And then, so that's now let's do the quad, which uses this redstone block, which is quite cool. Take a dropper. I do that even though in the door it's the other way around. So this is the input to the quad, and immediately we go into this line, which powers after this. So I'm also going to remember that the input's here, and build this circuit. So as I was saying on the closing, all we have to do is power this after a while. So the way we get that is from the input, power this, the hopper gets locked so it stays on and powers that, which means we get that. It's after a while, but whatever. But also, this is attached to the refire. So if chuck an item in there, it does that. And now, if you know anything about quads, you'll know that what we have to do, one tick this and then one or two tick that later. So like that. So the way we get the one tick to here is like that. So it's like that. Just cooling edge, monostable. And that immediately goes into this second line, which, and then because of this input link, it will retract the bottom pistons like that. Very useful. This input link gets used again later when this powers once more. So also we do that. But before we power this again, we have to retract these. And with that, we just extend the pulse a bit. Like that. And then we have to power that, which retracts those. And then while these are retracting, you do that to make a double pulse sort of thing. So the way we get this is, I'm not too sure, like that. So that just goes like that. So now we've basically got a whole trickle. So now this loops around. But then we need the second pulse to this, this line, which we have dust there, which gets powered by that repeater, which does break something, turns out. Right, this is 2-3 ticks. Yeah. So we get this. And the reason we have dust here is so we can power these two input lines at the same time. And the way we I've got one of these the way we do, well, before we power these pistons, we do the top retraction. Gets done by this 0-tick generator, which goes through to the repeaters but not to the storage pistons. And that, I think, it is 1 tick. So that carries on from there and does that retraction like that. And now we can power these two lines, but we power at the right time. So instead of those pistons powering, those pistons power, and the right timing is a 4-tick repeater. So it's a bit hard to see. But you see those two powered at the same time. And now all we have to do is power this line again to get that. And the way we do that is with a 4-tick and a 2-tick. But we need to power this right after this is switched off, and this switches off at 8 ticks after this dust. So we need to do this at 10 or 9, I think. And this is 4, 5, 6. That's 6, so that's just too early. So we have to lock this repeater to slow that pulse down, which does the second pulse, as you can see. And it's quite a quick pulse because it's a repeater monostable. So yeah, that's the quad done. It's decently fast, I'd say. Not super speedy, but it's not bad. Thing is, for this door, the top had to be incredibly slow. It was like twice as fast when I made it. But then because I made the bottom after, and the bottom had a slow tape, it meant we needed this huge hopper loop. So, talking about the hopper loop, or actually before that, we could show the refire. So, the refire goes in, powers that. So if I throw an item in there, we get the refire. And then bottom tape happens. And you do it again. I threw it in the wrong hopper. That's the top, so now all we have is the refire. It has to be ridiculously slow. So the way we do it is these two droppers here gets powered by that. We need to power the top one, then the bottom one. So the top one gets powered by the dust. The bottom one gets budded by the dust and updated by this retracting after this is powered. So we get this, which means if there's an item in the bottom one, it takes 2 goes to get it to this thing. So, so that gets powered by the quad 3 times, and we stick 2 items in here. So the first time it powers, this powers spitting out its item, then this sticking an item into there. Second time, this powers spitting the second item out, and the third time they're on. The first item arrives back here and gets brought up to there, but nothing gets spat out the third time. So we need to make the biggest hopper loop we possibly can. I feel like I changed this. This is what the circuit looked like before, but this 4-tick got moved up here, so we can make this hopper loop ridiculously long, like that. So now when this powers, it takes an awfully long time to get to this comparator, and then to do the return, stick a hopper into there. To connect these two, which we do with the first minecart, put rail like that, and then do that, and then test it to see if it works, and it does. So that's quite cool. It's not too hard of a clip, which is why I used it. I don't really like hard clips. Anyway, now we have the whole top. Which is quite nice. But sadly the refire is horribly slow. So yeah, that's the top. I think it's not bad. Better than my 1200 something 6x6, which is over there, I think. Anyway, now we go to the bottom, which is much more interesting, and it's good. So let's finish the tape, because it's used immediately. So what we have, this is also taken from Attas, this falling edge tape starting circuit. So yeah, it's a hopper, and might as well do this now. It's our second minecart. Just drop it into there. Right, we need a 2-tick on here first, so don't drop it into there yet. There we go. So this 2-tick goes into a torch. So that's the tape circuit. You'll notice it also powers that, and also doesn't work because I forgot that torch. So it just cycles, blocks around and retracts these from that dust and torch at the end. So that's the tape. Now forget about that for ages. So the input to this bottom is this hopper timer, like, not like that. Hopper timer like that. And then you stick 10 items in. Come around here, place a comparator. Go into this dust. This Peter powers the dust, but it doesn't matter. And that goes into this dual-edged monostable. So just gets 2 pulses out. First one to the storage, second one, well, both at the same time, to the tape, which doesn't do anything for the tape, but what it does do is something we'll come to later. So carry on with the redstone block tower. So what happens is that powers after a second, which switches that to tick off for a second, which is that dust off for a second, which switches that piston off for a second, which one ticks this comparator like that, which as you can see does the second storage, and because of this input link we get the pulse here, and this input link blocks the second storage from powering the piston stack, which is also very useful. So now we have to power the storage again, and well, there's not really any way to get a signal out from this input apart from here, which won't work, as you'll see why in a while. So we get the second storage pulse on the tape, which has quite a lot of delay already. Like that. But also, because it's the tape, and after the tape these blocks get retracted and then they need to be retracted into storage, so it does the storage pulse after the tape as well. So it's used for a few things. So that's all useful. And so now we've done this. Now we need to 4-tick that. Well, it doesn't have to be a 4-tick, but it is. So that does that, which pushes these up. And the way we get that is by connecting these, which also helps later on. And that should probably be a slab. Oh wait, no, it can't be a slab, can it? So that does that. So now, if I reset, I might as well test the opening part already. We get that, which is brilliant. And now what we need to do is push the storage over and up. And the way we do this is with a long pulse to the storage, because a long pulse does that and retracts, but it won't retract because the tape's pushing and whatnot. So the way we get the long pulse is another bit, which is basically taken from Atter's door, but it's so small I don't think it needs credit. It's a long pulse. It long pulses. Isn't that cool? Which is also used for other things, but there's no movable there in the actual door, so it powers the second storage, but because these are getting powered, the storage doesn't push up. But what it does do is the storage carries all the way on and goes through here, which means we get this sort of thing. Also means, well, it means this gets pushed over then up, and then the bottom pushes up again. That's just a side effect, which is actually helpful for later on. But what it also does is this powers and powers this dust, I think, or something, which updates this bottom dropper when this is being powered, which means this ends up clocking, which is annoying. But to get round that, I'll just reset. To get around that, we just keep this on like that, so it can't get powered again. So we've got that, and the way we power this is with this piston and this updater, and we have that going into there, and then this sort of toggle which gets powered by this, which is a 1 tick. So that's how it keeps it on to stop it clocking, and then it switches off eventually. Alright, I just stopped breaking the door. So you get that. That's what was missing. So also remember, this gets powered from up there, which goes through, which retracts this, which does the second, which does the long pulse after a while. Like that, and then the bottom powers again. And I'm just going to build this so resetting is a lot easier. Just imitates what the top would do. And then you can watch from this side. Get that. This powers again, which doesn't really do much. But in the actual door, it won't push up because this line will be on because of the tape. Speaking of the tape, I think we should add the tape. So I'll just imitate the top in this thing. So I'm going to go with that. I think that's the right timing. So we reset. These blocks in for the tape. This switching off retracts and extends that, which uncuts this, which powers that. So we will be able to see what happens. So the tape powers when the long pulse powers this to push up. Hopefully, unless I've done the timings wrong. So that pushes it up. And the tape should power. Which it does. And this does its long pulse, but these are being locked by that. Now the tape is going on. And as you'll see from this and that, after the tape's finished, blocks will get retracted into storage, which is quite cool. And you also see these pistons just 1 ticked, which didn't do anything as of now. But what that 1 tick would have done is these would have been extended and it would have retracted that. And then all we have to do, power that to do the retraction, and then do the long pulse, which does stuff, and yeah. So that's that so far. So I've done everything until after the tape. So next thing is to long pulse this to retract these pistons. And the way we do that is a bit awkward. It's unfortunate that this can't be a 4-tick. So it's a 3-tick. And that, I guess I can do this. As it breaks, I forgot. This, remember, this gets powered immediately. And we don't want this to get powered immediately, but I want it to be powered after the tape. So we just lock it at the right time. So you see that gets locked the first time it tries to power. Like there, and then tape goes, everything's the same, and then if we time this correctly, that needs to be popped up, be ready for when the tape ends, and this is pulsing constantly. Oh, what have I done? And you see that one tick from there powers that, but that doesn't retract because it's only a 3-tick. So that's that. So how do we do this retraction? Well, stick a block there, torch there, piston there. No, it's not there. Piston there with redstone block. No 4-tick there. So that, the reason why we can't just use this, and we have to use this, is because these power different, like, if this powered, if that retracted at 1 game tick, that would retract at 2 game ticks, that sort of thing. They're not in the same, like, pair of game ticks. So one of them is odd, the other one's even. And this one is the right timing, that one would be the wrong timing. Because it's just annoying like that. So this is needed for the extension, and this is needed for the retraction of that double. So yeah, so that was the retraction, and then we do this, and then this is the fancy part. Place a block there, sneak a 4-tick, I think, into there. A block. Oops, didn't mean to do that. A torch there. So that comes from the long pulse, which does a bit of cleverness. We get that. Wow. It does nearly the whole retraction. How does that work? Well, it gets the long pulse. So we get this. So the long pulse powers the storage and then powers this, which retracts those, which makes sense. The long pulse also switches this on, which if we wait a second, storage starts powering, storage powers, and this powers, which powers those. But you also see this is pushed up, which gets these pistons down here, which like that. Also powers these 3 ticks, but that doesn't do much yet. And then these storage pistons retract from the long pulse being off, but this line is still on from over here. So these retract, and then these extend from this line like that, does the retraction of those, and then these retract later, and these 3 ticks do that. And you will see this pulse from over here comes through here, up here, powers these, but nothing happens. Also powers the 3 ticks for a second time, which I think is really cool. But it all happens quite fast. So now all we have is this pulse here to do that last retraction, which is the bit iffy bit of the door, which is quite cool, but might make the door unreliable, and I'm not sure why. But basically, we get the second pulse to this, which does the retraction by powering this input line. power this input line with this hopper dropper, which gets powered by that block and by this. Goes over, does that. So if we stick an item in that dropper, we will see that it does that retraction. And this cart takes the item out of this hopper, dumps it into this. This has to be a 2-tick. So this goes into here, and we just have to return it to the dropper. Like that. But it ends up in this hopper because it's being locked by this, which means when this powers on the close and the first part of the open, this dropper gets powered, but nothing goes through. And it's only until after the tape, because the tape unlocks this, which lets the item into this dropper, that is ready for the retraction. This torch does power the dropper, which when the tape's powering this, the item loops around, but it just ends up in the right place, which is quite lucky. So now we've got the whole retraction. We just have to set it up. Oh, also, because now we've added this, it does the retraction on the close as well, which is a bit annoying, but it doesn't matter. So now I've got all this from before. And we do need to power... Right, we do need to power this at the right time to get the pistons ready. Tape goes through. Also see the double happen, which is a bit of longer than a 4-tick pulse because we've got these two combining. And then power that. The item is in there, and we do the retraction. So now all we have to do, 1-tick this while the tape is happening to reset the stack, 1-tick this to retract the stack down, and do this. So the way we do all that is by getting an output from the tape. Comes from this 4-tick repeater. And the way we 1-tick this line is with this monostable, which gets used twice. So, because this is a 4-tick and this line is spamming, the 4-tick stays on. So that 1-ticks this after the tape has started, but it's too early, so this is still spamming about and it doesn't work. So you need to slow this 4-tick down, which we do with another 4-tick, I think. So that just happens at the right time, and I got a bit lucky. So that locks it when this first tries to power, but you'll see that watch that will happen. You'll see this monostable goes when the tape has started. So this unlocks, this locks, unlocks, switches on. 1-ticks that at the right moment to reset the stack. We do the tape. That retracts, which and now what we have to do is 1-tick this and then here. So what we do is we just link these with a 4-tick like that. So now all we have to do is retract that, and it ends up working. The way we retract that is with a 2-tick here. Bish bash bosh, we've filled the space and it works. Isn't that cool? You can sit back, relax, and speed the tape up with a mod, which is helpful. Then we get that retracting, that redoing it, and then we get the retraction. And this item gets reset back into there. So that's quite cool, isn't it? But this bit of redstone is less cool, as it's just a big repeater line. So we've got this, which powers the bottom and the top. Now all we have to do is the tape and the sides. then we're done. So I'll do this side first. This top piston gets budded from here and here, so we can forget about that. This torch powers these two, and then we stick a dust down there, so now it powers these two as well. And a Peter down there, so now it powers all of that. So those sides pistons done. Now I've got all this air to do the rest. And this part is also kind of inspired by Atta's door. Is on the closing, this powers twice. On the opening, this powers twice. Nice and handy. So all we do, stick it into a toggle. So now in the opening and closing, this powers once. I forgot how the side works. We have that. So this, let's say one ticks. It doesn't one tick though, because this needs to be a slab because of that dust. It does that. It goes down into that, which also does that. Then we also have the tape, and you would notice if I lock this, nothing happens. Tape starts. So there's another toggle, which gets powered by that, and then we just have a dust here to do this top piston, if this dust doesn't power it already. And that's the door done. So these power almost immediately. What? Right, this has to be a slab, otherwise it powers this piston, which updates this, which makes this dual-edged. We don't want it to be dual-edged. Which breaks the bottom. So we reset the bottom, and now it should work. And this gets powered from the first refire, which is why it takes so long. Which is why we need so many items in here. But we can't speed the refire up, because then it won't grab the blocks for the second time. Because the tape's so slow. So it's all just juggling timings. And then that's the door done. Then you can fill it all in if you want to. But then you can't see the redstone, so I don't know why you'd want to do that. Now we really have to hope it doesn't break now, because I haven't actually tested it with solid walls and stuff. That one is a bit annoying because it retracts the floor, but it's not the end of the world. Also that grab is game tick perfect, I think, which is lucky because I don't have space for any more hoppers up there. Goodbye.